Artists, today we are going to be drawing a polar bear, and we are going to be using a Sharpie marker, and we know that a Sharpie doesn't erase, so I am going to challenge you to draw this polar bear without being able to erase a pencil line, and just know that you need to aim for your best, and if you make a mistake, you can turn it into something that will work. Remember, your art does not need to be perfect, does not need to look like mine. As long as you aim for your best and aim to do what is right, it will turn out great. So we are going to start with our paper vertical, and we are going to start at the bottom of our paper. We are going to start with 2 over the hill or rainbow lines that look like an upside down U. These are going to be the feet of our polar bear, and they need to be pretty big. They're going to probably take up about this much space. If they're a little bit smaller, it's okay, but our polar bear is going to be really big, so big feet will be helpful. So I'm going to start at the bottom of my paper, and I'm going to do 1 nice big over the hill line, and I'm not going to touch them together, but I'm going to do a second over the hill line. And they're not perfect, they're not exactly the same, and that's okay. Now, inside of my polar bear's feet, I can do some toenails, or I can do some lines. So I could do just lines, or I could do some more over the hill lines to make it look like the toes on my polar bear's feet. The next thing that I need to do is I need to connect these 2 feet with another over the hill line. So I'm going to be connecting these 2 with another curved rainbow over the hill line. And remember, it doesn't need to be perfect. Next, I need to make a really big polar bear body. So when I make this big upside down U shape, I need to try to touch all or close to the edges of my paper. If I make a really small body, I won't have enough room for the rest of my features. So I'm going to start here, and I'm really big, almost touching the side of the paper. I'm going up really high, almost to the top, almost over to the side, and back down. And this is going to be my polar bear's body. Now remember, it doesn't have to be perfect. Right now I have really giant feet and skinny little legs and a giant body, and that's okay because I'm aiming for my best. The next step is I need to put a polar bear head inside of my body. And I want it to be a pretty big circle because I need to have room for eyes and a nose. So inside my polar bear's body, I'm going to give myself a pretty big circle shape. Now I have a head for my polar bear. Now on top of my polar bear's head, I'm going to do 1 big over the hill line and another small over the hill line for an ear. And I'm going to do that twice. 1, 2. Now the polar bear's ears on the inside are going to be colored in with my Sharpie. Aim for your best to fill those ears in, that black Sharpie. The next thing I need to do is I need to give my polar bear a nose shape. He's going to have 2 parts to his nose. A nose and a snout. So the nose shape is kind of an oval, nice and big in the middle of the head. And then the snout shape, it looks like a U, and then instead of going straight across, I'm kind of giving a little curve. Now before I color in the snout, I need to leave a small area white, and then I can fill the rest in, and this is going to help my polar bear look realistic, make him look real. Now I need 2 eyes, so I'm going to do another half circle here and here, and inside I'm going to do 2 nice big circles, and those circles are going to stay white, as I fill in the rest of the eyes black. The final step is to give my polar bear some snow to stand on. So when I draw this line, I don't want to go through my polar bear, and I want the line to be above his feet. So I can start here, and I'm going to stop when I get to my polar bear. If the inside of my polar bear's legs are open here, I'm going to imagine where that line would stop and start again, and stop and start again. So now my polar bear is standing on some snow. My next step is to get a white crayon. And I know that this is going to be kind of hard to see because we have white paper and a white crayon, but we're going to be adding some watercolor to this project soon, and we will be able to see this white crayon. So in the background, so not on the polar bear and not on the snow, but in the background, we are going to add some circles or dots of white for snow. And if you want, you can draw some snowflake shapes, but I'm just going to use some dots. And I know it is hard to see, but if you lift your paper up on an angle, you'll probably see where your dots are going. And you won't be able to see these very well until the next time we add watercolor. So go ahead and put some white crayon dots all over in your background. The final thing we need to do is with our Sharpie marker in the lower right hand corner, we need to write our name. If you want to write your code on the front of your paper, you can, or you can carefully flip it over and put it on the back. But if you put it on the back, do it nice and small so that it doesn't show through on your polar bear. Our next step is to add some depth to our polar bear. And when we add depth, that means that we try to make it look 3D. Now, this is charcoal, and charcoal is very messy. And you don't need much charcoal because we're going to be using our fingers to smear the charcoal. So the very first spot that we're going to smear is going to be underneath our nose shape. So I just want you to take that charcoal and draw a line, and I want you to use your finger, and we are blending that charcoal with our finger, and we are blending right around that nose line. And if you need to add a little bit of extra, you can, but we are making our polar bear look 3D when we do that. The next spot that we are going to add some charcoal to is under our bear's neck. So we're going to draw a little line here with our charcoal, and then we are going to smear it together with our finger. And this is going to make it look like our bear's neck is three-dimensional. We're adding depth with our charcoal. The next spot that we are going to put some depth is down where our feet are. So we're going to add a little bit of charcoal right where the feet and the legs meet. And we're going to also add some charcoal where the feet are. So if you made some toenails, you can fill in your toenails. You can blend them, or you can put a little bit of chalk on your toenail lines if you made toenail lines. So I am blending that charcoal in. Now the next spot that we can just take our finger, we don't need to add any chalk. We can just add a little bit of depth in between the eyes. Our fingers are already dirty enough. We don't need to add more. And we can go around the ears a bit. And if you need to pick up some more charcoal, just rub your finger And if it doesn't seem like it's enough, we can add just a tiny little line on the sides of our ears to help give our polar bear some depth. And we're going to do a little bit right here on our over the hill line. And we're going to do a little bit on the corners here. And this is going to help our bears look a little more realistic. Now we're going to wipe our fingers off on the damp paper towel before we add our watercolor. Our next step is to use our blue watercolor and some water to show our snowflakes on the background and to completely fill in our background blue. Now we don't want to put any blue on the ground where our snow is, and we're just aiming for our background. So our watercolor needs water to activate. So I'm dipping my brush in the water, and then I'm dipping my brush into the blue watercolor, and I am going over my background. And you will see I'm aiming for my best. If a little bit gets in my polar bear, that's okay. If a little bit gets on the background, that's okay. But you will start to see that anywhere you put down your white crayon, those snowflakes are going to start to show through. If you need a little bit more water, just dip your brush in, dip it into your watercolor paint, and aim for your best to keep your paint out of your polar bear and out of the ground where the snow is. We have just created a wax resist, which means the wax of our crayon resisted the watercolor paint. And we have one final step. We're going to add a wash to our snow. And a wash means now that we've used our watercolor, our water is tinted blue. So without getting any more paint, we're just going to use that blue water, and we're just going to go over our ground a little bit. And it is just going to give our ground a wash, which means it's a really light blue color. It's just making our snow on the ground look a little different than the snow in the background, and we are leaving our polar bear white. So when you're done, you will have created a wax resist background. You will have added a watercolor wash to your snow, and your bear will look three-dimensional because you added charcoal to it to create depth.